Hello and welcome to episode 306 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty Dad FF. This is one of my favorite topics. You know, we've been hitting hard on the rebuild process. We've been hitting hard on guys that you need to be buying to expedite your rebuild, guys that you need to be buying to put yourself in a position to win. This particular show, we're going to tell you how to take that rebuild process, make it faster by buying secure assets, by buying guys with maximum upside. Nobody better to chop that up with than my main man Snoog. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. This is the best time to buy right now because people are quiet. People want rookie picks. So now if you're rebuilding and you want to turn rookie picks into players that actually hit, players of value, you can start doing that now, especially the wide receiver landscape. There's so many polarizing players. Your Chris Olaves, your Brandon Aiyuks, your Odunzes. We're going to kind of shape up this landscape for you, give you some of our favorite buys and who you need to be targeting on both rebuilds and on contenders. But rebuilds is the main focus today.
So we got the link down below. If you're in a rebuilding roster right now and you're like, hey, I need a little bit of help from Dad and Snoog, join our Patreon to smash your offseason, patreon.com/smash accept is underneath here. We are ready to fly. I got my C4 cherry flavor this time. Yo, a shout out to Jay Spanny in the Discord. He sent me Venmo to buy another one. He's like, yo, I tried the Hawaiian Punch. It's so good. Got the cherry shirt matching the cherry C4. And
there you go.
I'm pumped to talk rebuilds because this is literally the bread and butter. And I think every year, we add a little bit to the process. This year we're talking about it's a 6-step process. Step 1, honestly, evaluate your roster. This is something that you and I have been doing. We just did a roster review. This is the most important thing. We teach it at Smash Accept to be top 3 or bottom 3. You don't want to keep being in the middle. And so many of you guys, when I first started Dynasty, I'm like, all right, I got my first. Now you know what I'm going to do with that first. I'm going to buy an aging veteran, and I'm going to be a little bit better next year. And then I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that. And then all of a sudden, my whole team got old at the same time. We're not here to teach you guys to sugarcoat it. If your roster's trash, we're going to tell you it's trash. We're going to tell you to rebuild. If it's good, we're going to do that. Snoog and I have been doing a ton of roster evaluations and reviews. And Snoog, that's the biggest thing for me is, a couple guys, I said, dude, this is bad. We got to rebuild. And they're like, ouch. So I said, well, wouldn't you rather hear honest advice rather than me sugarcoat it and be like, oh, you're good. You're good. No, we're going to tell you how to do it. And I think the honest assessment of your roster is the most difficult thing for people. I can look at a roster at this point and look at it and I can say, you know what? That's top 3. That's middle. That's bottom 3. Real easy. And yes, there's going to be some variance with injuries, but we're looking at things like the age of the team. We're looking at the upside of the team. We're looking at the depth of the team, the rookie picks. There's so much that goes into there, and so many people struggle with that. How do you go about trying to tell people how to honestly evaluate their own rosters like you and I do?
Yeah, I always have the rule of thumb of having 4 to 5 cornerstone assets in my starting lineup. By that, I mean guys that are under 25, 26 years old that are considered top 12 to 15 at their position. Wide receiver, we go a little bit deeper. We go to I think it's like Rashee Rice is the cutoff for us. So a top 15 to 16 wide receiver we consider cornerstone. And then we go with running backs. It's got to be I think the cutoff for me is probably right at like a Bucky. I think the only cornerstone assets right now for the aid that hit all the requirements are Gibbs, Bijan, Breece Hall, Bucky Irving, Devin A-Chain. I think that's it right now. Not including this, obviously, Jeudy, and
they're going to
add a couple. They're going to add probably 4 to 5 in this draft class, and then quarterbacks had the same deal. So my rule of thumb is 4 to 5 of those guys in the lineup. If it's a shallower league, it's start 8, start 9. I'm cool with 3 to 4. If it's start 11, 12, I want 4 to 5. And I like to really build up around that wide receiver quarterback position. So I like to see, okay, this guy has Patrick Mahomes and Caleb Williams, and then he has Malik Neighbors, Garrett Wilson, and Drake London. Like that's what I love to see, or a Brock Bowers. Like that's what I want to see. I don't want to see, Breece Hall and A-Chain and then Brock Purdy and Jordan Love. Like that's still good, but I want to see real cornerstones built around that quarterback and wide receiver core. Then go get your Breece Hall. Then go get your Travion Henderson in the draft. Then go get your Quinshad Judkins. Like that's what I'm trying to do with these rosters, and that's kind of the rule of thumb that I try to work around.
Yeah, I love that you started with the quarterback because that's the most important position when you come to your super flex rebuilding teams. Is we need to make sure we look at what that room looks like. And for me right now, I have a top 18 quarterbacks, almost 20 quarterbacks. So you should be able to very easily get yourself into a quarterback position where, you want an elite Allen, Jackson, Daniels. We all want that. If you didn't draft them, you're not buying them if you're rebuilding. Like, it's going to be
Don't buy them.
long
so many
into
people
the process.
ask me that. So many people are like, should I buy Jaden Daniels for
No.
Justin Herbert and 2 firsts and a second? I'm like, do you want to wreck your dynasty team? Then do
Yeah.
it. If not, then you don't do that type of trade. But if I have Daniels, I would accept that trade if I'm getting the Herbert side.
If you're rebuilding, honestly, it's a 2-year process. So, like, at the end of this, and I'll share my roster. You guys have seen my Thanos roster of rebuilding, where it was like, I got to a point where I had so much capital. Sure, take my 102 and the 25 first, and I'll give you, I'll get Jalen Hurts. Or, yeah, sure, I'll buy Malik Neighbors or whatever I want. You get to a point where you have so much draft capital, you can make those kind of moves. But early on in the process, you're not buying Joe Burrow. You're not buying Patrick Mahomes. You're not buying Justin Herbert. You're like, they're going to cost you too much. So I think that's your big 7. Caleb's 8. Love, Stroud, Maye. I'm right now focusing in on the guys that we've been talking about buying is Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud, Drake Maye, Kyler Murray, Brock Purdy, even Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff, because those guys to me are solid. And those are the primary pieces that I'm buying. You know what? I have talked about this a lot. I'm buying Drake Maye absolutely everywhere I can. And the value is, a lot of people are like, Dad, he's already gone up. I know, but it's not where he's going to be yet. You see them draft Ted McMillan, or you see them take an offensive tackle at 4 and sign a wide receiver. Drake Maye's value is going to go up. He's already gone from mid-third startup to late second startup. And mid-second is almost where I feel like he belongs going, because we just saw a phenomenal rookie season and no weapons at all. Drake Maye is going to ascend. He's my number 1 buy at the quarterback position. Yours is CJ Stroud. Same kind of thing. Like, you're going out there, and we've seen enough on tape that we know we can build around these guys. It's not like we're saying spend crazy money on Michael Penix. We're saying get these guys. We've already seen it a little bit.
Yeah, Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud, top buys for me if you're looking for like a more expensive quarterback type of guy that can rise in value, especially Caleb, because he has that rushing upside too with Ben Johnson coming in. I think he is that guy that could jump into that top 5 after this year or the year after. So I'm really trying to buy into him because people just want him off. They don't like that he paints his nails. They don't like that he's a drop. I don't give a damn. He's good at football. He can throw the ball for 4,000 yards and rush for 600 plus rushing yards. High ceiling type player. Then you can jump into like the guys you mentioned, like the more like mid-tier, like your Brock Purdy's, your Jared Goff type. I love buying Brock Purdy in that range as my top guy. Another one that has decent rushing upside, like 300 to 400 rushing upside yards at the position, as well as like a 4,500 passing yard guy. He's going to get a big contract. He's going to secure himself as a top 15 guy. He's like your high-end stable QB2. That can be a good QB 1A, B if you have a Jordan Love or CJ Stroud or a Caleb Williams as well. And then even going to the cheap guys, you're shooting for upside. Trevor Lawrence, Anthony Richardson, those type of guys are good QB 2s and 3s to get on your roster to make a bet on. Like, go get them for a late first and make a bet on these type of guys. So
jumping the gun. Exactly what I was trying to say is that's your upside guys. You want a quarterback 1 who's going to put up rock solid numbers. That's your Maye, your Stroud, your Caleb Williams, maybe even Kyler Murray. You want a rock solid QB2, and this is where we're talking about buying guys like Trevor Lawrence, Bryce Young, JJ McCarthy, Anthony Richardson. There's a lot of risk involved, but if you're tearing down and you're insulating, so Jordan Love is phenomenal first season, not so great the second season, but I think you can get Trevor Lawrence. I think you can give Jordan Love and a late second and get Trevor Lawrence in a random 26 first. And those random 26 firsts are where you close the gap. Because if you told me at the end of the year that Trevor Lawrence was worth a second less than Jordan Love, I would believe that. Like, I think he could really move himself up there with finally getting a new head coach who's offensive minded, having Brian Thomas Jr. in a healthy season there. And now I think they take another wide receiver and let Christian Kirk walk. And now we're saying Trevor Lawrence really could ascend that area. Bryce Young's another guy like Drake Maye, where you're like, okay, he is now, you saw him as a top 10 quarterback. over the final 7 games. Now he's going to get a wide receiver that can actually catch the ball. A wide receiver that doesn't cook raccoons. Like they wasted their pick on Xavier Legette. Now we're going to move ourselves up there. And the one that everybody keeps asking me about is JJ McCarthy. So JJ McCarthy is an interesting one because the risk reward on this is huge. He would be the QB1 or QB2 in this class. He probably should be worth the 103 or 104 because of that. But he's still, to most people, and in startup drafts, he's going around the 109, 110. I think Darnold's gone. I think Darnold goes to the Giants or the Raiders or somewhere that's got extra money under the cap. And I think JJ McCarthy is going to be the guy for the Vikings next year. If it isn't, then you're going to have to sit on another year. But I think if you're rebuilding and you're not rebuilding into year 2, you're rebuilding in year 1, JJ McCarthy's a fine buy.
Yeah, I like JJ McCarthy. I like him as a prospect. I don't like how a lot of people are saying that, though. Like, just because he would be QB 1 or 2 in this class means he's worth this. He tore his ACL. He hasn't played football in over a year. He hasn't played a single snap in the NFL. Don't pay what you think he would be worth if he was coming out as a prospect, because he's not. He's been in the NFL for a year. He's played 0 football. He tore his ACL. He didn't look great when they showed that. Like, he looked like he was like 170 pounds soaking wet when they showed that. Like, he didn't look like the JJ McCarthy that we've seen. Like, JJ McCarthy we've seen is a guy that was pretty built up, like looked like an athlete. That JJ McCarthy, I know it's just a picture, but that he looks like he's recovering from a season-ending injury. So there's a long path for him. He's definitely going to be the Vikings guy. He's going to get a shot with elite weapons. I think he has the upside to become like a Brock Purdy, like a Sam Darnold plus type of player where he's a high-end game manager plus. I don't think he'll ever be a top 5 guy. He doesn't have the tools as a Caleb Williams, as a Jaden Daniels, as a Drake Maye, but he can be a Bo Nix plus. Like, he could be one of those type of guys. So buying into him, if I can get him for 108, 109, 110 plus a second, that type of value is probably where he's sitting around market value, but he's like a fringe top 18 to 16 quarterback right now in Dynasty because of the weapons and the talent around him. But if this had happened to a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix, they'd be worth a late second right now, maybe a third.
Yeah, that's the difference.
So that's what I'm trying to say, right? Like, he's still young. Like, so he has a year. I'm just worried. Like, what happens if he comes out and he looks like he puts up 2,800 yards passing, 14 touchdowns, and throws 10 picks and has a Bryce Young rookie year? It's impossible with the weapons he has.
Not in that system. It's not going to happen. That's the thing. Is I think
but that's what I'm saying. Like, what would happen? Like, would he drop to a second? Like, what would happen in that scenario?
I think you're looking at him as he's a rookie again. Like, so you're literally giving him another opportunity. Every rookie that has been drafted inside the top 15 and has had an injury their rookie season has maintained the exact same value. It's the whole way across the board. Every quarterback, we've looked into it in the last 10 years, they've all maintained that same level. So I think you're looking at him as if this is another rookie. He's still young. It's not like he's coming out at 25 years old. The other guy, if you want to hoist one of these bad boys up and you want to win, the guy that you can buy dirt cheap that everybody just throws up in their mouth when you talk about it is Anthony Richardson. In Smash Accept 17, he went off the board at quarterback 20. Like, that's just absurd. He has put up top 15 numbers almost every week. It's not pretty. It really isn't. But the rumor that a lot of people are saying that Aaron Rodgers could go to the Colts or, one of these other guys is going to go to the Colts. I think the Colts bring in a veteran, but Anthony Richardson's going to get that make or break year, right? Like, last year was completely wasted, but the 4 games that he started as a rookie, QB1 every single time, top 5 upside. You were just saying JJ McCarthy doesn't have top 5 upside. Anthony Richardson does. Like, I think if you're really trying to insulate down, and the biggest thing that Snoog and I really are trying to say when we do that is, like, when we suggest buying an Anthony Richardson or a Justin Fields, it's because we're tearing off of, like, the other day, one of the guys in the Discord, we got Anthony Richardson in the 109 for Bo Nix. What percent chance is there that Anthony Richardson is better than Bo Nix next year?
There's a good chance.
I mean, there's a good chance.
Decent chance.
But worst case scenario is you have the 109, and Bo Nix now is worth the 104. Anthony Richardson is worth 109, 110. You make that move, and it doesn't pan out. You end up still having that 1.9 to back up. And a lot of times we talk about quarterbacks, we're trying to insulate. That means we're getting an additional pick and we're trying to tier up, and no position more than the wide receiver and quarterback position. Quarterbacks is one thing, and we've covered that a lot, but wide receivers, Snoog, people are starting to get it in the Discord. They understand that if we're doing that, and again, we'll pop up the Discord link here in a second, but we are not trying to build a roster loaded with the following players, okay? This is where so many of you guys come to me when you're rebuilding, and this is your wide receiver room. It's Zay Flowers. It's George Pickens. It's Jaylen Waddle. It's Jamison Williams. It's Jerry Jeudy, Jaden Reed. And you're like, Ricky Pearsall. You're like, I got a nice collection of these guys. None of those are league winners. No, none of those are guys that are paying you money. You look at my rosters, you look at Snoog's rosters, and throughout the year, we've invested in the guys that are up there. I'm in 18 leagues, about to be 19. Every single one of them has either Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Malik Neighbors, Puka Nacua, Brian Thomas Jr., Amon-Ra, or Lamb. I don't have a single team that doesn't have one of those guys. Not a single one, because you need a foundational elite level wide receiver. Then the next area we're trying to go to is we're trying to buy also foundational, but not quite as valuable. Your Nico Collins, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Ladd McConkey, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, and on a lesser extent, A.J. Brown. And that's where we're really trying to go. The next step, Snoog, is not assessing who the top 12 wide receivers are, but the guys that we're trying to buy that are going to get into that range. The Marvin Harrison Jr., who's someone you and I have just been banging the drums for. He will be a top 12 dynasty wide receiver by the end of the year. But Snoog, if he puts up 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns, he's going to be a top 8 dynasty wide receiver. He is going to be
top 5.
Right up there. It's very
because people will go back to that pedigree, right? If he puts up a year like that, he'll instantly be above Brian Thomas Jr. again. He'll be above Puka, Amon-Ra, all because of the pedigree, because he was that fourth overall pick, one of the best prospects ever from the lens of many NFL scouts and draft boards and players and coaching staffs and organizations. So it's that pedigree that he holds on to. If he goes out there and puts up 1,010, like Drake London gained value putting up 2 straight seasons without hitting 1,000 yards, like because he was a top 8 pick, because he was an elite prospect. Players hold value for a while, especially young elite wide receivers that flash talent. That's the thing you guys got to understand, is just because he didn't have a Malik Neighbors type rookie year and have 180 targets doesn't mean he's bad. Malik Neighbors was just force-fed the ball like crazy. Like if Marv had 170 targets, he probably would have put up 1,200 yards too. So that's what people don't understand. Speaking of Malik Neighbors, I put a post out there today. You know, when you look at things, in a fantasy football target, a target in football is worth 1.78 fantasy points per game. A catchable target is worth 2.31. Huge difference. Last year, I told everybody that Malik Neighbors was Jamar Chase 2.0. You know, you're going to be the same type of player. You look at their college. I put that tweet out there. You look at their college production, their size, their speed, everything. Targets this year. Chase was number 1 with 175. Neighbors was 170. That was number 2. But the biggest difference, Jamar Chase, 78% of his targets were catchable. And he finished as the wide receiver 1. The Malik Neighbors, 69%. That's 26th in the league. Like, that is really low percentage of catchable balls. If that goes up to 78, he puts up a Jamar Chase type season. You know, so like if you can get Neighbors plus for Chase right now, you need to do it, because you're not going to be able to do it in a couple of months. That I had to just throw out there, because for me, I'm trying to get him wherever I can. Another guy from this rookie class that originally was a sell for me, with Ben Johnson coming in, I think Rome Odunze is a massive buy for your rebuilding team. I think you can tear down off of a London, a Wilson, an A.J. Brown, a Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I think you can get the next guy that's going to join that group. I think Rome Odunze in a first is feasible for tearing off of Nico Collins right now, for tearing off of Drake London. Drake London's value has risen so much where you're not trading for Drake London unless you have extra assets where you can give up Zay Flowers plus, Chris Olave plus. But I'm buying Rome now. I know. It's not wishy-washy. A lot of guys were saying, Dad, you're so wishy-washy with Rome Odunze. No, I'm not. I was selling when it made no sense.
now I'm buying because the writing's on the wall. Like he could, if Keenan leaves, this could be a massive opportunity here for you.
He's another one of those guys that him and Caleb Williams were just held down by a horrible coaching staff and offensive line. Now they get one of the best offensive-minded coaches in the NFL coming in to be their head coach. They have the 10th overall pick. They're going to make some noise in this NFL draft and throughout the offseason. So I think the Bears are really going to hit a bounce back. And I think Caleb Williams and Rome are going to get things going. Rome's one of those guys that can do it all. Like he can win downfield. He can win consistently underneath. He reminds me a little bit of like a Michael Thomas in a way where he could just win like the slant dig, like out game and just win like that. But he can also win kind of downfield, like with that Chris Olave type skill set. Cause he was like a 4.4 runner. Like he ran fast for his size, 6'3", 210, ran really quick. I think he's a 4.4 runner. And he's a complete player. So Rome's a guy that, again, could have that JSN type year 2 emergence where he has 100 receptions. That's very doable for him, in my opinion, especially if Keenan Allen goes.
For sure. The next part of this process that I really want to hit, and we'll go back and forth here a little bit. We always talked about tiering up, and we want to do that. We want to make sure we are loading up our wide receivers. And the asset that we're doing, the reason we do that is if we take last year, we were taking your late firsts and we were tiering up and we were getting ourselves better wide receivers, knowing that 2026 was going to be loaded with running backs, knowing that our 2025 was going to be loaded with running backs. So we built our roster. Snoog, the 2026 class, real quick, what is the main, focus of that class? What are the prizes from that class? And where is the heavy hitters on that? Because if we're rebuilding, when we rebuild in 2023, we knew 24 was going to have quarterbacks and wide receivers. And when we rebuild it in 24, we knew 25 was going to be loaded with running backs and tight ends. When we rebuild for 2026, what is the main objective? Like, where are we trying to – Arch is what everybody's pushing for right now.
And he might not even – he might be 2027 too.
Yeah,
he said it.
Which would make that even better. That class is going to be crazy.
It's definitely like tank for Arch. Like that's like what I think he's the 101. I think he has Heisman plus upside. He is very, very good upside, in my opinion. There's Sean Leavitt from Arizona State. There's Cade Klubnik from Clemson. There's a lot of good quarterback prospects in this class. I'm pretty sure DJ Lagway is 2026 as well from Florida, who is also a good player. Or no, he's a freshman. He's 27. 27 class, phenomenal. But the 26 class is another one that's looking to be kind of driven by the running back position. I guarantee that class is a lot worse than this class, though. Like, yeah, you can tell when a class is going to be really weak, and when a class doesn't have a single position that is absolutely stacked. I'm like, trade your 26 first. If you have really good contending teams and just go get assets, like use that to go get a cornerstone. So use a 26 first, a second, and a Josh Downs and go get AJ Brown, or use it with a George Pickens in a first and get AJ Brown in a second. Like those are the type of moves I'd be doing to tier off my 26 first if I have a really high end contender. I'm not just doing it if I'm a mid team, because all draft classes has value. But you're looking at Jeremiah Love, Nicholas Singleton, Darius Taylor, Katron Allen. Like there's good running backs in that class, especially like there's a couple of the higher end guys are really good players. Like we were talking about Nick Singleton as a top 5 running back in this class. So he'd be RB1 or 2 in most classes probably. So he's going to be a guy at the top end that runs really good. He can do it all. Quarterbacks are looking better than this year. So that's another plus sign there. It's the wideouts that stink. Like you got a couple guys there. I mean, Cardinal Tate could emerge from the depths, but that class is just looking like a no man's land to me, other than quarterback and wide receiver. And I don't even think, or running back, and I don't even think the quarterbacks are going to be that high end unless Arch Manning declares. So,
couple quick trades as you guys are going. Speaking of trades, every Tuesday night, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, Snoog and I jump on with Brock Dynasty. We talk about trades. This week, it's going to be 101 exclusives. You guys make sure, if you guys are in the Patreon, we cover those trades. We're going to kind of give as many of those as we can. Michael Lewis says he just traded the 104, 202, and Josh Downs for Bijan. Felt like the smash of the year. That's where it's at, baby. That's how you go ahead and you tier up is what we're talking about. We're making those kind of moves. Another question here from Davey Crockett. He says, will this be on Spotify? Sometimes your streams, I don't see them on podcasts. Great question, Davey. Sometimes Snoog and I are doing YouTube exclusive shows. If you want all of our content, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple, we're doing YouTube. Some of them are YouTube only streams. Others we're putting out there. Snoog, we've been releasing 5 YouTube videos and 6 podcasts a week. Like, we're literally cranking them out there. So if you don't see it on Spotify, make sure you guys check us out. Hit that smash subscribe for YouTube. This part of the process, Snoog, what I want to talk about is rookie wide receivers or young wide receivers who are worth less than a first and increase in value. My guy right now is Ricky Pearsall. The writing is on the wall. Deebo is gone. Deebo is going to be going to the Steelers, to another contender. He's already said he wants to go. The team's already said it's probably going to happen. Brandon Aiyuk is going to be a little bit slow to the process right off the bat. You know, Brandon Aiyuk should be ready by training camp, but I think you're going to see it's going to be wait until maybe week 4 where he is truly ready to bounce back. Mm-hmm. Ricky Pearsall, in his 2 games where he had over 80% snap share, wide receiver 7, wide receiver 14, 9 targets per game, 14 receptions over those 2, a touchdown in each game. Ricky Pearsall was drafted early for a reason. I think Ricky Pearsall is going to get an opportunity to shine, play in that big slot. I think I'm buying every 49er I can. Christian McCaffrey's too cheap. Brock Purdy's too cheap. George Kittle's too cheap, but I did just sell George Kittle. I sold him in Smash Accept 17 in the startup. For my pick is on the clock here in 2. I got a 27 first plus something in the range of the early second with rookie picks. So I'm okay with that. But Ricky Pearsall, I think, is going to increase in value. What I want to say about that is then he's a flip for me because you bought him at the 205. I like the talent. I don't love the talent, but trade for him now. Insulate off of someone. If you're rebuilding, get Ricky Pearsall and a mid random first, something that could be bigger for T. Higgins. And now Ricky Pearsall blows up. You trade him for a 27 first plus someone else. This is the process of you don't have to love Ricky Pearsall, but he is going to increase in value. I think it's a lock, and I'm ready to buy him with his current cost right now. Most people are saying you could buy him for the 202, 203. I'm okay with that. I would rather do a pair of random 26 seconds or late 26 seconds. And I think that's feasible. Or you go to a guy that is an all-in contender and you give Stephon Diggs in a 26 second. And I'm with it for Ricky Pearsall. Who's someone that you're buying in that similar realm?
Yeah, Pearsall was that guy that was in that. He was our wide receiver 7 post-draft. I think he was like wide receiver 8 or 9. We really liked him in the pre-draft, kind of that post-combine, because he was good route runner, separator, good athlete. Like, checks all those boxes for fantasy football that you look for. So excited to see that he finally hit, and he's one of those guys that is going to be like, he's not going to be the next like Amon-Ra St. Brown, but he could be like that Jarvis Landry light, one of those like good slot guys that can get you 90 receptions and 1,000 yards in the season. Maybe do that once or twice or 3 times. Be a producer type player. For me, I don't know if this goes off kind of the script that you were trying to work around, but it's Chris Olave, another like young receiver that is probably worth. I'm seeing a lot of people. Should I trade the 201 for Chris Olave? Should I give up a 203 in a second? Should I give up? Like, I'm not seeing him worth
a lot of people. He's going under a first, and that's wild.
That's what I'm saying. I'm buying that because this is a guy that paced 1,000+ yards in 3 straight seasons. You want to talk about Garrett Wilson, Drake London, all those. Like, he is arguably right there on par with production with those guys, with equally bad of a situation and quarterback play. Just in 2022 alone as a rookie, he paced 1,200 yards. He put up 1,000 in 15 games. In 2023, missed a game and a half, I'd say, because he left the game wicked early with a concussion. He had 1,123 yards, 5 touchdowns, 138 targets, 87 receptions. Another one probably paced out to like 90+, 1,200+ yards at 22, 23 years old. The kid's still 24 years old. This past year, he didn't hit it hard like we thought he would, but he had 12.8, 20.6, 16.7, 18.7. He only, like, other than that, he had 3 and 3. And then the other 2 games, he didn't even 10%, 3% of snaps. He got hurt. He left those games. there is a little bit of concern with concussion there, but if I don't even have to pay a first for a player that can give me 1,200 plus yard upside, I'm going to buy into that all day long. So I'm going to start sending out some Chris Olave offers because he actually just got traded in one of my big stake leagues with a bunch of the guys on Twitter and the fantasy football analysts, Zoltan, all those guys. I think it was like 201 and Xavier Leggett for Olave. Like I'd smash Olave in that side all day long. Like that type of value that you can accumulate for Chris Olave. So I love that type of move. So who's another guy that you would buy into a little bit cheaper?
So a little bit more difficult than Ricky Pearsall, right? Because we could read the writing on the wall with Ricky Pearsall. This one is like, if the hometown favorite comes back, it's not as good. But Jalen McMillan's value, if Chris Godwin leaves, is phenomenal. You saw what he did from week 14 on. I mean, he was unbelievable. Like he was catching touchdowns every single week. He was a league winner as a rookie over that week 14 to 18 range. He was a top 12 wide receiver, like with Mike Evans in there. You see what he was able to do, 7 targets per game down that stretch, 50 plus yards in every single game. He had 7 touchdowns over the final 5 weeks, Snoog. He's here to stay. Like he is going to be someone. And then in the playoffs, 92% snap share. Even if Chris Godwin comes back, Jalen McMillan is here to stay. And now you have a guy that is a nice wide receiver 2 in his offense, elite level wide receiver 3 in an offense. But again, this is the scenario where I'm buying Jalen McMillan at cost because I feel like if they don't bring back Chris Godwin, damn, like that value is going to skyrocket, right? Like he is their new Chris Godwin. He's going to put up fantastic points. Just like Ricky Pearsall, though, I'm going to flip him again. I'm not building him as a foundational asset, but we're talking about in a rebuild, we're trying to just take guys that are going to increase in value.
Yep.
Is Terry McLaurin going to increase in value? No. He's great if you're a contender. Nope. Are guys like Michael Pittman going to increase in value? No. But Jalen McMillan will, and I think you're going to see him worth a 26 first. I mean, he goes from right now, early second. If they don't draft a wide receiver, he goes up to the 108 and 26 value. Like he instantly skyrockets up. And I think you can trade him and make some money real quick.
Yeah, definitely. I like that one. I like that one a lot. I thought you were going to say Adonai Mitchell. That's who I thought you were going to say. Because there's like still a chance that he had a lot of those
he's better.
routes.
I think Adonai Mitchell's better than Pearsall or McMillan, but we're in quarterback purgatory right now with Anthony Richardson's not supporting anybody.
AD Mitchell still has the talent and upside to be the wide receiver 1 on the Colts, I think. Like he had so many routes that were like, wow. Like in his rookie year.
He was open.
Like I saw some routes that I was like, okay, this is like the Adonai Mitchell that I scouted as a prospect. Like this is why we had him as a top 7, top 8 guy. And there was a lot of overthrows and he had his drops. Like he had some moments where you're like, he's a rookie, but he had so many moments where it's like what could have been type situations where I could see him. You could probably get him for 3rd at this point. I would love buying into him for that cheap. But my next guy, even though we just talked about AD Mitchell briefly, he was a guy in there, but Waddle, another Olave situation. Guy probably valued at a late first, early second. He's been a guy that's put up a high ceiling, 1,300 plus yards in a year. Like he's a guy, if Tyreek Hill leaves, will gain 80% of his value back. He'll probably be valued he'll be valued back in that top 14 to 15 range if Tyreek Hill leaves. I guarantee it. And he's going to be a guy that's going to get 100 receptions if he's healthy and be a producer. But like Dad said, no, then I take him in a second. I go get AJ Brown, or I go get Garrett, or I go get London, or I go get Brian Thomas, like one of those type of guys. That's the philosophy that we preach, is buying into players that are undervalued. And when they get their value back, you flip them for better players that already have value. Like that's like that's a considerable wheel that we go by. Like Tyrone Tracy, a guy that we were talking about a lot during that August kind of range where it was like, he's probably going to be the guy there. And he was an elite receiving back. We started picking him up on waivers everywhere. And I had like 15 shares of him. I think I have like 1 or 2 shares left. And that's literally because I can't even get a second for him in those leagues. So I'm just going to hold them. But Like we're flipping him. We're taking him in a second for a first. We're taking him in a second for CMC. We're taking him for Kamara straight. Like those type of trades is what we're trying to do now. And that's the process that we live by. But that's for another show. We're talking QBs and wide receivers for rebuilds right now. But where are you at right now, Dad? Like where do you want to head into this now?
I got a couple guys that are close to a first. Another guy in that same area. And if I said Josh Downs, I'd ask you to throw something at me. But I'm saying Jerry Jeudy. we're anti-Josh Downs sometimes. Jerry Jeudy, if you look at wide receivers that had 140-plus targets, only 2 of them had under 15 fantasy points per game. It's Garrett Wilson and Jerry Jeudy. And what I just got done telling you before is catchable targets matter. If they were catchable targets, it's 2.31, points per catchable target. You have to believe Jerry Jeudy is either going to A, Jameis Winston comes back and he's going to see the same level, or B, we're going to see a little bit more competent level, a guy he's always open. He is someone that historically throughout his career has always found a way to get open. He's an elite level separator. He runs fantastic routes, and he's here to stay. I mean, I think still just 25 years old. If you look at the games where, last year he finished as a top 12 wide receiver at 25 years old, and we're still not, if you look on Keep Trade Cut, they have him right now at wide receiver 35, and he's 25 years old. Like, I would prefer him over Waddle if we had the right quarterback position. Waddle's a little bit more, they both have similar type pedigree. They're early firsts in the NFL draft. But I think Jeudy, we just haven't seen the ceiling yet, but we started to see it. When Jameis really started to turn it on in week 11, he was wide receiver 5. Then he had, he was wide receiver 1 overall with 13 targets. He had a 14 target, an 18 target, and he did the most with them. I mean, his yards per catch were, if you look at it, top 12 in 90% of his weeks. He was top 12 in yards per catch. He only had 4 touchdowns and he finished wide receiver 12. If this offense gets any better, if this offense improves, the quarterback play improves, Jerry Jeudy is a guy that, again, at 25 years old, you make a trade for him, you give up a pair of seconds, and he will be worth a first at some point this year, in my opinion. Do we have one more guy in this range where you're like, he's almost worth a first, but you should still be buying?
Yeah, I think it's got to be Brandon Aiyuk, right? Like at that point, because I was gonna go deep and go like a Marvin Mims, Dontavian Wicks, but they're not even close to worth of.
No,
we'll save that for the next thing we talk about. But I think it's Brandon Aiyuk because I think it was gonna be DK, but I think you're getting a first for him in every single league. Aiyuk's a guy that I think you could still weasel like a 202 plus like a decent piece, or like a 203, or like some turd sandwiches and a 201.
Some dynasty weaseling.
He's just a guy. He got the big wide receiver 1 contract. Yeah, he had some setbacks to injury, but I think that if all comes back into play and he kind of gets his stride back, he's going to be another one that can test that top 16 to 17 dynasty wide receiver range again, and he'll be worth a first. So he's a guy that he's been 1,000-yard producer. He's been a 1,300-yard producer. He's been an elite route runner. He showed all the flashes we need to see. He's in the elite system. He's with the quarterback. He's got everything you could want to be a wide receiver 1. So
since 2023, among wide receivers with 70-plus receptions over that time, so in the last 2 years, where do you think he ranks in yards per reception and yards per target?
3rd.
He's first in both. 17.2 yards per reception, 11.2 yards per target. I'm buying Ricky Pearsall. I'm buying Brandon Aiyuk, and I think both of them are undervalued right now. And I think both of them are going to ascend in value. The next part, you kind of hit on it a little bit, is now those are guys that are worth a little bit less than a first. These are guys that I want to mention that are like deep dart throws. Some guys that you're buying for right now, I think you could get for a late second that could increase in value. You mentioned Marvin Mims, so I don't want to take him off your plate. I just bought for the 302. I bought Quentin Johnston for the 302. He's wide receiver 59 right now. Like, it's not sexy.
Coming off 708 touchdowns.
Yes. So why the hell is he worth a 3rd-round rookie pick? If you take away, let's just say this, if you take away his horrible rookie season, right? Just forget it didn't happen. And you say, so he goes down to an ACL tear but year 2, he posts 800 yards and 700 yards and 8 touchdowns. He's worth a first, but you're getting him for a third now. And like, I just can't see an area where he doesn't at least return your value. If they draft another wide receiver, I don't think that hurts Quentin Johnston. He's going to be a boom bust Mike Williams type, and that's fine, but he's going to win you some weeks. Like, he had some big time games where he was winning you your week in fantasy. And that's where, when you're talking about guys that are worth less than a mid-second, guys that are worth a late second, early third, you're thinking to yourself, I need a guy that's going to either increase in value or he's going to give me some boom weeks. And, he had multiple games where, if you look, there was a stretch there where he had 5 touchdowns in 7 games. And one of those games, he didn't record a target. So that one doesn't even count, but he went out there and he balled out. Week 18, 13 receptions, 186 yards, and no increase in value at all. If Ricky Pearsall did that, if any wide receiver did that was in their sophomore season, they skyrocket in value. But Quentin Johnston has that name cachet. I'm not saying go out there and throw something crazy, but I think you could insulate and get somebody that's barely worth a first, right? Your Mike Evans type, and just say, dude, throw me Quentin Johnston in this deal too. He will at some point be worth a second round pick. I know you guys were saying last year he was worth it, and I was saying that and it didn't happen, but he is someone that flashed. He's 23 years old, round 1 draft capital. I'm sorry, but if I could get him for an early third, I'm going to do it all day.
Yeah, I love that idea too, because he had 711 yards, 8 touchdowns in like 14 and a half games. That's like really solid. And he's tied to Herbert. Say they don't address the wide receiver position really at all. They say they bring in like a Calvin Ridley or bring Keenan Allen back. Just buzz around that. Like, Quentin Johnston's role doesn't change. That's what's special about him. So he's still going to be a guy that gets his touchdowns. He's going to be touchdown dependent probably, but he's still going to be a guy that is worth a third. Like, he's a good flex play plus. Going to this next guy here, Marvin Mims for the Broncos. He's a guy we really liked as a prospect coming out of that 2023 class. He was really a good wide receiver prospect. Broke out as a true freshman at Oklahoma. He was a good production profile prospect as well. Since week 11 on, 13.3, 7.2, 19.9, 6, 9.5, 30.2, 22.1. Wide receiver 13, 52, 31, 3, 7, 60, and 52. So you could see that he's clearly more of that kind of boom bust type player, but he just started to hit his stride kind of towards the latter half of the season. Want to know the craziest part about all of that, Dad? He didn't hit 50% of snaps once in that stretch of games. Yeah. He was 47, 31, 25, 35, 24, 23. If he starts seeing 60, 70% of snaps, kind of emerges as that wide receiver 2 there in Denver behind Sutton or whatever they do in the draft, he could be a guy that can be an 800, 900-yard receiver and score 8 to 10 touchdowns and be like that kind of like Will Fuller, Jameson Williams, light, a deep threat type guy that can be efficient with Bo Nix's with his rocket arm, because he kind of slotted right in and started to be that guy. And I think Sean Payton's warming up to him, and he's kind of starting to get more and more out of his skill set. If he can get 5, 6, 7, 8 targets a game, he's going to be a guy that you can plug and play any moment at flex, maybe wide receiver 3 on a week if you need him. He can step up on bye week. So, again, playing chess, not checkers here. Not everybody's going to be a home run. We're going for guys that can emerge and be worth an early second, and then we flip that. Like, there's a process that we go by. So we're not going to just sit here and tell you, go buy Malik Neighbors. Like, we're going to say, go buy these guys that can get there, but then go buy these guys that could get to where those guys were. So that's what we're trying to do here.
So there is a scenario here where you talk about, you buy these guys, you buy Pearsall, you buy Mims, you buy, McMillan, you buy some of these guys, and they all start to become worth first. Then you sell them for a first plus, and now all of a sudden 4 trades into it, you have 4 first-round picks, and now you're like, now I can buy Malik Neighbors, right? Because I'm into that process. A couple guys that really, right now, wide receiver 72 and 73 on Keep Trade Cut, both of them worth less than a second on market value, which just blows me away. It says on Keep Trade Cut right now, they would be worth an early 25 third. I would smash that for either of these guys. That's Stefon Diggs and Christian Kirk. Stefon Diggs and Christian Kirk, you're getting injury discounts. But here's the thing, and I posted this about Davante Adams the other day. I'm going to post it about Stefon Diggs. I think the same with Christian Kirk. These are three guys that are going to be either free agents or traded. And what's the biggest thing that creates value in Dynasty? It's recency news, right? So Stefon Diggs goes and signs with, the right team. I mean, Texans were great, but now maybe he goes back there at minimum because Tank Dell's gone, but he goes somewhere else. He goes to New England and is the wide receiver 1, or he goes to, one of these teams with a young ascending quarterback.
Yeah.
Stefon Diggs is a lock to increase in value. Christian Kirk was a wide receiver 1 2 years ago, where he goes to the right scenario as a security blanket for a quarterback. We're not saying these guys are sexy. Someone called me out and they said, Dad, Stefon Diggs is 31 years old. Why would you buy him on a rebuild? Because he's guaranteed to increase in value. He's at his lowest point. So that's the thing in Dynasty, right? It's not always buying Malik Neighbors, Jamar Chase. It's buying low and selling high when it happens. You're going to buy him for a pair of thirds, and you're going to sell him for a mid-second after he has a couple wide receiver 1 weeks. And that's kind of, where that area, another guy in that area is Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale Robinson had 140 targets last year, only 10 fantasy points. If you increase the catchability rate of Wan'Dale Robinson and increase it, it's going way up. So
That's
these are not
crazy. He had 140 targets and he didn't even hit 700 receiving yards.
No, he had 10 fantasy points per game on 140 targets. You're talking about some of the worst quarterback play you'll ever see. Yeah. So I mean, and somebody said, well, Dad, what are you paying for Wan'Dale Robinson? In your rookie draft, when you get the 308, I think you can get Wan'Dale Robinson. Because someone's got rookie fever, and that's how you buy these guys on the cheap. Hollywood Brown's in that consideration because he's rumored to the Bills. It's just like you get them thrown in deals now, and then you add them, you sell them right at the end. Snoog, anybody else there that's in that real deep level, like, Dontavian Wicks is wide receiver 69. I felt like that was going to be your guy.
Yeah. Yeah, he's still a very young player. I think he's 22, 23 years old. He's a really good separator, good route runner, can win versus man, good on first downs. Like, he has all the good metrics you want. I think we are a year too early on him, though. And the reason I still feel good about him is because I don't think that any of the guys on the team are the wide receiver 1 there. So that's like, to me, it's going to be, I think, when it's all said and done, they're not going to bring back Christian Watson. I don't think Romeo Doubs is coming back either because he's a rookie in 22. He's a free agent next year with Watson, both second and third round picks. It's going to be Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, and whoever the hell they draft. Probably a Maye, Buka, Luther Burden, one of those type of guys. Or they get a free agent. Or it's Davante Adams. And if that's the case, sign me up for Wicks. Because if Adams goes there and he gets to play with Adams and learn from Adams and kind of master his craft, because that's who he models his game after and who people have comped him to. He struggles with the drops. If he didn't struggle with the drops, he would have been great last year. He probably would have had a good season, 700, 800, 900 yards, probably scored a couple touchdowns. So I think we were just a year too early on him. I think he's a guy that can get some hype back. And if he breaks out next year, I wouldn't be surprised. So another cheap guy.
I love it. Make sure, we have our rebuild process. It's something that did a rebuild show, something that you're going to be able to, increase in value. It's got a 95% hit rate of guys going from absolute last into the playoffs. I missed it on one of mine, so it's like, it is tried and true. It's not perfect, because the players are going to increase in value, but we're talking about insulating. We're talking about splash trades. We're going to continue to hit this on the process the entire way throughout the offseason. And in Dynasty, there is no offseason. For you guys that are new to our process, we have to at least call it that. So thanks again for tuning in and enjoy the process.